Hi guys, Dave Shopey is here, and I am continuing with my robot rebuild that I've been working on for a while now. I think if you've seen some other videos, you'll see the progress I've made from motorizing the tread section up through the leg section, wiring everything, the torso, getting arms fit, redoing the holes. It's been a little while now since I did a video. I can't remember where I left off, so I knew I was going up into the head section. I've repaired some ribs on this collar, and you can't even see. I think they were right in here where they were broken, and I've fused them back together. Yeah, you see a little dot right there. I had 3 or 4 of them cracked here and a couple there, and then I had to figure out a way to mount this onto the torso, and that's done. I simply, and I do remember making a video of this. Okay, I did put screws on it that are mounted from the inside with acrylic blocks and glue, and then simply into a hole right there. And then when that's down, you just gonna have to reach up through the arm or through the vent down there and reach up in here and put a wing nut on, and that is as simple as that. Okay, now I am going up to the challenge of animating the old radar that I had, and that's out in the garage right now. So let us pause here and I'll meet you out in the garage. All right, we're back at you now. And we're out in the garage, which I don't really like working out here too much this time of the year, because we are in South Florida and middle of July, and we're in the middle of a sincere summer right now. So it's in the mid-90s out here. Got the fan going, had to shut it off because of the heat. But here's what I'm doing. This is where all my tools are. This is my dirty area to work. This is the radar section that came with the robot that I'm rebuilding for a guy, as I mentioned many times before. There was a couple issues with this thing. First of all, there was a big block of wood glued in here that the guy, I guess, just used screws to screw down into to mount this thing. I had to take that out, flatten this out in here, and also the other issue we had was this neck pipe went down into here, and it wasn't glued in there, but the paint had fused itself to the inside, so it was stuck in there. The problem was when it did that, whoever he had it, it was cocked to the side like this. You can see that? It was cocked like that, fused in place, and that made the bubble right on an angle, and it looked like he was drunk. So I had to cut it off. I basically ended up having to cut it off and chip it out and sand it out in there. And I got more pipe. I'll make a new neck for it. This will go up into the brain. The bottom plate and the brain cup. So I mean, that'll stand up at the proper height with some more PVC, and I'll figure out something to do. I'll either fuse it back in with glue or make a bracket down there so it can be removable. I hadn't gotten that far yet. We're working on this. I had to take the ears off with the sensor dishes, and I've tested those motors. Those motors are good. Animation, okay. Greg Loge makes a nice animation kit with gear. You'll see the gear later on. He doesn't sell the Lazy Susan. This is a 9-inch Lazy Susan, Lee Valley, that I got from Lee Valley. It's very nice. It spins very nice. You guys don't cheap out on this, okay, because this is a precision piece of material that's supposed to just spin freely on BBs, and cheap ones don't spin that nice. So get a nice one. They're not that expensive. The other thing is, you notice I have holes drilled in here already where the bolts are going to go up into the section, the radar section, to hold this in place. Let me get this lined up here because I've got some markers here, here, and here. That way I know my holes are in place down there. So the other thing I have to do is I had to go and countersink these holes here where the screws are going to be going through, so they lay flat. We don't want those sticking up like a panhead screw with the rounded head sticking up and interfering with the rotation. So that's the easy part, actually. I marked those holes through these holes to make sure that they were right. So the difficult part is going to be, how am I going to safely and securely attach this screw to the top. This is styrene, I think. I'm not sure what it's made out of. It looks like it's made out of layers. You can kind of see right here, one layer broke off, and I think they're just layer upon layer glued on top of each other. I don't trust that material as a good anchor, so I'm puzzling about how to run this down through these holes into the radar and have it grab hold securely, because I don't want this radar flipping off the top of the robot, you know, at any point, because these weren't secure. Because these are going to be holding the radar down to the torso, basically through the Lazy Susan. I think what I'm leaning towards now, and I think the way I'm going to go, is get these little plastic anchors. There's only about a 1/2 inch material from the top here. You can see that the wire for the ear has come through here, and you can see they're right flush with this. So if that tells me that that hole in there, measured at the hair, that's only about a 1/2 inch from the bottom of that hole back there to the top of here, and I don't want to drill through here. So what I'm going to have to do is get a good secure known measurement for the depth and the thick of this plate here, and then cut this down to that, a little bit short of that, drill these holes out to that depth, pound this anchor in, and then I think then I'll have a secure, let me put this here. Yeah, okay, then I'll have a secure anchor to anchor into. That'll screw down into that. And of course I'm going to have to cut these to length, these screws to length too. So that's where I'm at right now. I've already, like I said, started just mark the holes with the drill. They've got to be drilled out bigger and just the proper depth to accept these once I cut these down. And then I'll mount this, mount the motor, mount everything to the glass collar you saw earlier. Okay, and that's where I'm at right now. Getting this thing put together, get it motorized with a saber-tooth and kangaroo motor controller and a motor, which I'll show all that later. But right now I'm doing the structural stuff. Oh, one more thing I have to mention is I have to bring this up too farther, because right now it is pretty much below the surface of here. So I need to bring it up far enough. I'll shim it up far enough so there's a gap between this surface and the plastic collar where the top of this Lazy Susan will be attached to. And that'll be attached to the inside ring. So I'll do that by putting shims at each one of these holes. That's why it had to be nice and flat back in here in these areas, so to have nice flat shims. Alright, we'll be back later and I'll show you the progress I made, okay? Adios. Alright, I took my measurements. It was just over, this plate here is just over a 1/2 inch thick, just a touch. So I went ahead and chucked up a 1/4 inch drill bit with a flat tip. And it's got a little pilot tip on it too. So from where I have my marker here to there is a 1/2 inch, and then I went ahead and I drilled, put it up on the drill press, and I drilled out my holes where I had showed you my pilot holes before, and then I took one of those anchors, measured how deep that was, and it found the spot so that you go from the top all the way to the bottom of the hole, cut it off. Basically, simply with my Dremel bit here. Try to do this with one hand. Okay, simple as that. And clean it off a little bit. One-handed. That should work. And I simply put it down into that that hole there, into that 1/4-inch hole I drilled, and put. Let's see here if I can get this right. Okay, put this little thing on it like that, and hopefully the camera won't. Whoop! There you go, and there it is. That plastic is all the way down in there, and now once I get my proper depth here, where this is going to actually sit, how deep, I know how from here, this top of this hole to the bottom of that hole, how long my screws have got to be. I'm going to probably cut those off too. So again, I don't want them poking through. I already, right there, you can see that little spot right there. That's where that little pilot bit started poking through. So I know I'm right there. Okay. Alright, so I'm going to put the rest of these in, just like you saw me, and I'll be back shortly with more. I had mentioned earlier that I needed to set the proper elevation of the Lazy Susan so I could have a nice gap, or the proper gap, between the radar and the collar, so it would spin. That's the whole idea. So you have to get the proper height of this, and if it sits right down on the base here, it'll be too low. So I found out through some careful measuring that the proper height that I would have to add is exactly the size of a 1/4-inch nut. So I just am simply laying a 1/4-inch nut down in here, and the deal is with these screws is it keeps it centered, and I want to make sure that this nut stays, this shim, it's going to be a shim now, this shim stays exactly put once I take the screw out, because I got to take all these screws out, set it on top of there, and put the screws back in without them moving. And this is for now and in the future. So what I'm going to do now is take, now that I have my anchor in there and I don't know where the screw is going to go, I'm going to simply just hot glue this shim into place. And this is industrial strength hot glue made for a high temperature gun, and hopefully that'll be, I don't want to go over the top because that's going to interfere with the Lazy Susan. So I'm just going to go around each one of these. Hope my head's not in the way. And hot glue them right into place. Alright, we'll let that set up. And once that's set up, I'll take the screws off and I can start installing everything. Alright, they will be right back. Okay guys, we're back out of the hot garage and into the cool robot lab, which is actually the extra bedroom. So anyway, I've got the gear mounted inside. I've got the Lazy Susan mounted inside. I just have the radar right now sitting on top of the collar in its proper position. what I did since the last time we talked is I got the elevation, proper elevation, so there's be a little bit of a gap between the radar and the collar, because it's got to turn. And you can see it's spinning pretty nice right now. It's just laying on there right now. It's not attached to the collar, so the weight is just holding it down. Sadly, this old radar has got a little warp in it, just like the rest of everything else. The torso had a warp in it too. You can see right there how it kind of bows up, down, up, which shouldn't be much of an issue if I find the best side. The problem is that this is, up here is kind of warped too. It's got a little bit of a wave to it, but I'm kind of picky. I know I'm a perfectionist, but that's why the guy asked me to do this for him. So we're really close down here, which is really what you need it at all the way around, this gap, and then it kind of picks up through here. That's the best I can get it. So, I mean, once I get the motor installed and it starts rotating with commands, it'll only go back and forth like this anyway, so you're not going to see a lot of that. Plus all the lights and bubbles and everything else moving will draw your attention away from that. So anyway, let's take it off of here and I'll show you. Oop. Ignore that, something fell out. I'll fix that in a little while. So anyway, here's the inside. And you can see I have the gear mounted, pardon all the bumping around, mounted underneath a Lazy Susan, so they'll be, and it's bumped off the bottom with those spacers I talked about before. So these screws go all the way through. The outside of Lazy Susan clamps the gear in place down on the spacers I have underneath the screws, and it lifts the whole thing up to the proper. You can see a little bit of a gap a little bit of a raise right here. This edge, it lifts it up enough to show that gap up on top of the collar. So anyway, very easy. What kind of spacers did I use? I used just a typical little 1/4 inch nut, flange nut. That I found that was just the proper height I needed to go between this surface and the bottom of the gear, and that hold it up just right. So worked out great. And now the next thing I need to do now is I'll be mounting the gear here. I'm sorry, the motor, the holder, on the top of the collar here in the proper spot. I'll get into that in the next video, I think. And then once that's on the collar, I can drop it on here and adjust the gear to the proper height that will spin the radar. So that Greg Loge provides this cool little acrylic piece that centers everything up for you with set screws in it, and I think that's really cool. It's just nice, but I have elected to take that off, and I'm going to put this little clamping hub on there instead. It's a whole lot more heavy duty. Got it from Searle City. It's a 4mm set screw hub. It's not a clamping hub, it's just a set screw hub. And it's 4mm because that's the millimeter size of the motor. So anyway, this is a clamping hub right here. That'll clamp. I can set that at the proper depth and line up the gears. So that'll be on my next video, I think. What I have to do now, before I do all that though, is attach the collar to this, and that'll be the last portion of this video. Okay, I'll be back after I get ready to show that. See you in a little while. I thought I'd just stop and mention a couple notes here for a second about how I'm actually going to proceed. You can see I've got the collar upside down on top of the radar. The way Greg's instructions, Greg Loge's instructions state here, and he's got it pretty well figured out, is that the Lazy Susan needs to be attached to the collar first, and then the gear placed on top of that, and then the motor mounted to line up the gear. The thing is, if you bolt it all together like this, there's just no really way to do it with this collar I have here. This is an old collar, homemade collar that somebody made. It's not one of Greg Loge's collars. And his instructions are set up for his collar. So, that being said, what I do, I had attached you saw me attach the Lazy Susan to the radar, and I had to do that because I needed to figure out how to make the mounting holes. So what I'm going to do now is figure out where a access point is going to be for these. You can see the screws here all the way around and back in here, and there's just no way to get to those, so I'm going to have to cut a hole in here so I can reach in there and screw that down after I have the Susan attached to the top of this collar. If that doesn't make any sense, it will. So basically what I'm going to be doing is, let's say just right about here, I'll drill out a hole, and you can see there's already a hole here that somebody had made, so I can just drop the screw down in there, run a longer screwdriver down basically in here, and screw it down into there, and then I'll turn it to the next point, and like there's another screw there. I'll drop the screw in that hole, run the screwdriver down, drop it, and then I'll move to the next one. That way I can attach the radar to the Lazy Susan after the gear is in place and the motor's mounted and everything's lined up. Once I have the motor mounted and the gear in there and everything lined up, then I can attach the radar with those mounting holes I showed you before. So the trick is going to be, though, getting to these screws right here, and to do that I'll drill out another. Somebody had drilled a hole right here. That's probably what that was for in his original robot, however he had this thing put together, but my holes are way back here, so I got to drill another one back here. Alright, so that being said, I will be back, and we will show you what needs to be shown at that point. Talk to you later. Okay, something else I realized was once the ears go in here, this is the sensor ears, it's going to have little motor. It's got little motors in here to spin the disc. The wire coming through has got to come through and go down into the robot, or at least into the collar, where I'm going to have the regulator, the voltage regulator sitting, and the control to turn it on and off. The problem being is, even though this is raised up here with these shims that I told you about, the spacing is still pretty tight in there, if you can see that. It's right there. So those wires coming on both sides here will get wrapped up in the gear. So what I've done, or what I'm doing in the process of doing here, is to make a little, I'm routing a little trench through there, I guess you could call it, where the wires will be coming out. See, they're right there at the end, or right there at the base. So I routed a little trench there, and I'm not just going to lay the wires in there and glue them in, because I want those to be removable. So what I've done is I guess that's the word, I've got a it's a Bic ink pen outer tube. I just took the guts out of it, and it makes a really nice tube, and I'm going to run these wires through there after I cut it down properly. So it'll make a really nice conduit, and that'll lay right down in there. And I will then glue the conduit in, run the wires through, kind of dip it down and in. Of course, this will be cut off here. And then once that's in there, you can see the wires will be protected, and below the level of the gear going around. So anyway, what I'm doing now, like I said, is I am routing that in, and I'm going to keep the camera on while I do that. It's going to be a little noisy. I'll try to block off the noise later on and edit the noise out. But I am just using this Dremel Trio here. It's a nice little tool. It's got an air intake or air dust removal system on it right into my shop vac. So what you hear now is a lot of noise. Okay, safety first, I guess. So you can see how that works. I'm going to get the rest of this by hand, and it will be a beautiful thing when I get done. So, okay, I will come back and show you as I move along. Okay, adios. All right, I've got the grooves cut, as you can see, all the way to the ends. I've got the conduit, or the little ink pen bodies, glued in there with some 5-minute epoxy, and I've actually just temporarily threaded one of the ear wiring through there. So you can see it's down below the surface now, and there's no way that the wires are going to get wrapped up in that. So of course I'm going to have them supported properly coming up through here down to the controller. So that was a fun little project. Now I'm going to move on, and I'll touch base with you guys as I make progress. Okay, see you soon.